Welcome to the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Welcome to ITSP Magazine. You're listening to a new episode of Stories from Space podcast, where your host, Matthew Williams, examines the history of human spaceflight, the breakthroughs that revolutionized our understanding of the universe and our place in it, and the brave individuals who work tirelessly to advance the frontiers of our understanding. Knowledge is power, now more than ever.
The authors acknowledge that this podcast was recorded on the traditional unceded lands of the Lekwungen peoples. Hello, and welcome back to Stories from Space. I'm your host, Matt Williams. For this week's episode and next, I want to share an interview I did with AADYA Geotalks, a new podcast launched by Bharti Sharma, an acclaimed geologist and founder of the AADYA organization. Named after the Hindi word for origin, AADYA was founded for the purpose of promoting knowledge about planetary and geoscience and to create opportunities for collaborative research to address critical global challenges. During the interview, we talked about science journalism, my own podcast series, and even my science fiction writing. It's been divided into two parts because the overall interview lasted for quite a while. We really got into a lot of good subjects, and I can honestly say it was one of the best interviews I've ever had. Hope you enjoy it.
Hello everyone, welcome to a new episode of AADYA Geotalks. I'm your host Bharti Sharma, geologist and founder of AADYA Planetary and Geoscience Research. I started AADYA Geotalks last year during World Space Week as an outreach program of my venture called AADYA. I wanted to create a space for people working in my field, that is Earth and planetary science. I wanted to bring their stories in space science or Earth science in particular, and to decode some of the questions we always have in this field and to create awareness in the general public. And to continue this spirit, today my guest is Mr. Williams. He is a space journalist and science communicator. He has written so many science fiction, and his works have been published in leading magazines like Universe Today, Heroics, Business Insider, to name a few. He also hosts the podcast Stories from Space, which is about past, present, and future of space. I'm so honored to share this screen today with Mr. Williams. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invite and to be on our AADYA Geotalks today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. What an appropriate background there.
Yeah.
Yes, well, thank you. The honor's mine. I've seen some very impressive things from your organization, your causes, and you personally. So, yes, I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. It means a lot to me. So let's dive into this conversation. And first of all, I'll begin with what is your journey into space science? You are hosting a space podcast called Stories from Space. So what initially drew you to this field, and how has your perspective on space exploration evolved over the years?
Well, it was kind of a very winding path because, in fact, I've always been fascinated by space and science, and even though I was not particularly good at the pure sciences or math in school, but that's part of what I liked about them. They remain sort of inaccessible and unknown. So for several years, around the time I was in university, I started taking it upon myself to try and learn about these things. And so I did not read any of the works of Stephen Hawking, but I did read a number of things about his work and his studies and how it fit into the whole context of, astrophysics and what do we actually know about the universe. And I did read Galileo too in university. That was very exciting, and how he went about proving the heliocentric model in his dialogue concerning the two chief world systems, it's called. The thing that kind of launched me into science communication I became an aspiring science fiction writer back in my mid-20s, and I've been wanting to write for many, many years. I was greatly inspired by a lot of classic works of science fiction, and also some of the some of the great works of literature, the great satires like 1984 and Brave New World, and it was after reading Dune that I made the connection and realized this is the genre I want to write for because, contrary to sort of popular perception, it is serious. It is real, and it is used often to convey some very, very real truths. And it was in 2010, just happy accident, that I met Fraser Cain, and he is the publisher of Universe Today, which remains my main the main publication that I work for. I knew his wife through Taekwondo, and she had told him about me and about how I was an aspiring science fiction writer. And I should also mention that I was an educator at the time. What I ended up majoring in school was history, which is a very big passion of mine. And so I would become a high school teacher, and in 2010, I had moved to BC a few years before that and married my wife, and so I was now a permanent resident here. And so this friend of mine introduced me to Fraser, and we started talking, and he took it upon himself to sort of mentor me in how to go about sharing content with the world. So I followed his advice, and I had also been writing sort of part-time for him, doing small articles on various general knowledge articles related to space and the STEMs. And by 2014, we would speak, semi-often there. And by 2014, he was looking at the content that I was putting up on my website. As per his advice, right? Write about stories that are related to what you were writing about, yourself in fiction. And he said, you're basically writing about the stuff we write about all the time. How would you like to come and write for Universe Today? And he'd also started, he had become an advisor to HeroX, which was launching at the time, right? The world's biggest crowdsourcing platform. So he kind of double hired me. It's like, write for this, write for that. And by 2015, I quit my job as a teacher and decided to write full time. And it's been that way ever since. And in terms of how it's changed my perception about space exploration, I always found space exploration very fascinating. I always considered it a worthy thing. But I would struggle to answer questions like, shouldn't we fix Earth before we do any of this stuff? And I thought, that's just such a terrible perspective, but I couldn't explain why. But yeah, it made me appreciate how space exploration is about Earth. It is about solving our problems. It is about getting beyond them, about transcending them, and looking for solutions to all the limitations that we deal with down here, and how it's essential to that, and how realistically, I don't think humanity has much of a shot of growing, evolving, and bettering itself without it. And so that became my whole outlook, really. It was that, yes, solving for space solves for Earth. And that's not an original quote. I got that from Dr. Cyan Proctor, and she claims to have heard it someplace else, but to me, she's the one who said it. So yeah, definitely that did bring about that shift in perspective, and above all else, it really helped me learn just so much about space exploration science, the kind of stuff I didn't really get but was fascinated by. It's gotten to the point where, I actually do kind of get it now. Oof. And it's very, very mind-blowing, so much of it.
I'm so happy for you that you find your genre and it's the mystery of the unknown which drew you to space science. And
Oh, yeah.
similar for me because I was inspired by, I read a chapter on alien life when I was in fourth standard, and there was another chapter on Kalpana Chawla, who's the first female astronaut from India, though she was not, I mean, she shifted to US, but she was kind of Indian origin. So I wanted to be in space since then. And that's how I wanted to, like, what I have seen, like talking to people, uh, everyone's journey is quite similar because they all want to discover something or the unknown, the mysterious nature of space. I've always, uh, pulled them towards space science and yes, I want to explore something. And you rightly said that we are exploring space or we are building technologies for space because we want to better our life on Earth, because somewhere when we are exploring the outer world, when we are developing green half space for outer space or for our space habitat in on Mars or on Moon, we are actually doing it for Earth as well, where there are extreme environments where we can't have vegetation properly for human consumption. So these things are helping us on Earth as well. So my next question for you is that you cover in your podcast stories from space. You have covered everything from dark matter to extraterrestrial life, and I have read your post on LinkedIn as well. So I would like to know that for you, is there any space mystery or topic you are currently obsessed with that, I have to decode this, I have to write about it? What's one thing?
Well, yeah. I mean, it was relativity. I was trying very hard for many years to get to the point where I could explain general relativity to people in a way that was comprehensible. Because, because of what Einstein said, this quote is attributed to him. No one really knows if he said it. But if you can't explain something to an 8-year-old, or if you can't explain something to the point that an 8-year-old would understand it, you don't fully understand it yourself. And for a very long time, that was me. I could write an article on general relativity, but I was just stating stuff I read, and the how and the why, like how did Einstein make these connections and who contributed to that and all that was beyond me. But I finally got to a point where, okay, well, there's still some things I'm a little iffy on, but nevertheless, it got to a point where it's like, oh my God, I can actually relate this now in a way that's relatable. Since then, I'd say it's probably the Hubble tension. I'm trying very hard to not only know what it is, but also explain how we got to that point. And Webb's recent observations. I'm trying very much to get all that information together in my head, because I've written about it, but there's new information all the time, and it can be hard to keep up with. But that is something I definitely want to be able to crack. Like, exactly how did we get to this point there? And I'm working on it. It's coming along. Yeah.
That's so true that if you can't explain a simple topic to a 5-year-old or 8-year-old, you actually don't know that topic. And I always quote this whenever I come across science communicators, because I really appreciate the work they are doing, because of science communicators and space journalists, we are able to decode and we are able to create awareness related to our topic. Because otherwise, I believe that whatever science we are doing now, it is all limited to the articles or to the research papers we have published. It is limited to that. We are not actually deciphering the knowledge in the general public, and sometimes they don't even understand why we are going to space, or why we are doing this much research, or why we are getting so much funding for this thing. If we are not communicating our science, then it's not a point for anyone to do. So you are doing a great job in this field, and the approach towards explaining a 5-year-old or 8-year-old is really beneficial for everyone. So continuing to that, science fiction often inspires real scientific discoveries and vice versa. So have you come across any science fiction ideas that you believe could influence future space missions or technologies?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, they're coming true all the time. But yeah, what's left? But yeah, the one thing I really have enjoyed was hard science fiction, right? And just how the how authors who were either took the time and really did their homework, or who were scientists themselves, they're able to convey ideas decades before anyone really expected them to be realized. And in terms of examples, well, looking ahead to the sort of far future, I think the works of Alistair Reynolds are very, very good like that. They because he's written extensively about humanity becoming an interstellar species, but in a way that is very scientifically grounded, right? There's no warp drives or FTL or any of that stuff in his stories. I think he has toyed a little bit with the idea of wormholes, but not much. Just about all of his books involved relativistic space travel. And that was very interesting to me as I was reading it at the time. That and how he described how, yeah, spacecraft will have gravity if it's accelerating. If not, well, yes. Basically, you better make sure your ship rotates. And there was also Arthur C. Clarke, of course, Rendezvous with Rama in his Space Odyssey series. I thought those were really, really very beautiful. I do believe, I mean, he's the one who introduced me to the idea of an O'Neill cylinder, right? I had no idea what that was before he spoke about it, and I thought, well, that's brilliant. And years later, I would learn more about it. It's like, yeah, this is where the concept originally came from, and it rotates in space and all that. And you can create whole biomes in there. That's so cool. And yeah, Kim Stanley Robinson, he too. I to this day I have no idea what his background is in terms of. Yeah, I know he's like an ecologist, and yeah, a very renowned author and advocate for environmentalism. And yeah, he's basically written about everything I want to write about, but he did it already and he did it better. So yeah, I've frequently opened up his books, started reading and went, oh crap, there goes. I had an idea for that, but you already did it. So, but yeah, luckily I persevered there though. Yeah, but so much of what he's written was very influential for me because, of course, what he has to say about terraforming and people settling on Mars, and the most recent book of his that I read was Aurora, which if have you read that?
No, I haven't read that, but one of my friends recommended it to me, so I was like, okay, I'm excited now.
Oh yeah. That is very good, and it tackles an idea that I'm trying to work on right now, which is the idea of a generation ship and everything humanity would need to do in order to basically travel from one star system to the next, and how basically, yeah, you need to bring Earth with you. You need this sort of an ecological ship that mimics all of Earth's biomes, and I read that it was, I think, about 4 or 5 years after it came out, but I thought this so closely mirrors all this stuff I've been doing about the Biosphere 2 experiment, and because there's been attempts to do another experiment like that, and they're working towards it, and so it was very good, and a lot of what he has to say about will humanity ever be able to become an interstellar species? Because it's not just getting there that's the big challenge. It's like living there, right? And all the questions about habitability. I mean, that too. That is definitely another subject I'm obsessed with. The idea of, can any exoplanets out there really be called habitable by our standards? Because even if it's got all the prerequisites, water, plenty of sunlight, and oxygen atmosphere, nitrogen atmosphere, yeah, how do we know we're not going to die the second we breathe the air, right? Microbes and all that stuff. Yeah, so all of those works. That's just to name a few, right? There's been some amazing work that dealt with that I read, like Charles Strauss, nanotechnology, and just the transformation of humanity through all these advanced technologies that are really just kind of exploding right now. But yeah, these are the ones that really had to do with space. And although, yeah, Charles Strauss did tackle that in his book Accelerando, he proposed a resolution to the Fermi paradox, which was really quite interesting too. Yeah. In any case, those are some very clear examples, and they definitely inspired me when I was writing. I was just like, I want to write something that is hard science fiction. So, how do you do that?
So I'm so happy that I asked this question because I have seen all the popular science fiction movies, and I'm more of a movie person and then a book person. But I enjoy reading and watching movies both. So, but I'm happy that I asked this question because now I have got so many recommendations that I'll be going through it, and I'm happy for our audience as well who are bibliophiles that they will be reading a lot because yes. What I believe that when you read science fiction, it gives you a perspective. Okay, this can happen. This can happen too. And as in my question, I said that these fiction often inspire the real science discoveries. And the thing you mentioned that it is somewhat easy to go to other celestial body, but it is quite difficult or next to impossible that having our own habitat over there and taking our biosphere from here to there and actually thriving there. So it's quite difficult for all of us, and that's what we are looking for. So talking about science fiction, you have written for platforms like Universe Today and HeroX and Business Insider. So what's one of the most memorable stories you have covered? Here I want to appreciate your own work.
Well, there's several, but what always comes to mind for me was 2016 when it was announced that yes, Proxima Centauri, that there is an exoplanet there, according to an anonymous source, and how that was sort of leaked, and it was by the European Southern Observatory that did this, and it was very interesting because shortly after that news broke, the person I was working with there at University Today, right, he came across this story. It was in the German newspaper Der Spiegel, I believe, and yeah, it's like, well, credible publication, definitely, and they've got an anonymous source. The ESO said they're making an announcement later this week. And the source spoke in we terms, like we pushed our instruments to the limits and stuff. So, the two of us, we were just like, oh man, this sounds legit. So wrote the story and then started doing some sleuthing because, oh yeah, not the end of the week, the end of the month, they said. So it was a couple of weeks away. But myself and my friend and colleague here, we just said, we want to know now. We want a hint. We won't say anything, but can we just, get some kind of confirmation? So we asked around, talked to people, and nobody admitted to anything, but they did say things that suggested that there's definitely something here, but we can't talk about it. And so for weeks, a lot of people were accusing us of speculating and editorializing, and I didn't know what to tell them because it's like, but we kind of know that this is real, but we can't talk about it. And then, of course, it was confirmed, and that was a huge story and a big, like watershed moment because it was just like, yeah. This is right next door in cosmic terms, and it's a rocky planet. It's Earth-sized, thereabouts, and it's in the habitable zone. And so all of that was so exciting. And yeah, there's been a lot of research since that has raised the whole issue of, well, are red dwarf stars, can they support habitable planets? And And it's been very interesting because of that debate too. Yet another topic I'm obsessed with. Yeah, it's been going back and forth in terms of the research findings. With that doesn't look good to actually it could. And one of my favorite stories about that, which I didn't get to cover, but when I saw it, I was just hooray!
Yeah.
It was what observatory was it? I think it was Chandra, or there was a research study that looked at red dwarfs and their flare activity, and they said the big problem here is mega flares. Little ones that's not like a deal breaker for rocky planets, but mega flares definitely are. They would kill a planet's atmosphere. But then this research said, those come out of the poles of the star. At least in the cases we've seen, the vast majority came from the poles of the star and therefore wouldn't affect the planets on their ecliptic, that orbit them around their. Yeah. And so, again, I thought that's the best news yet that I've heard of this, because prior to that, it sounded like, there's an outside chance, but it doesn't look good. But after that, I thought, oh, well, welcome back. And and I was surprised to learn too. It's that this debate's been going on a lot longer than I know, right? It's gone back decades. But because we're now finding all of these exoplanets and so many of the closest exoplanets to us, right? As I recall, there's 30 planets have been identified within 20 light years from Earth, give or take. 29 of them are in red dwarf systems. And it's like, yes, these systems are clearly very good at making these planets. And we still need to look well beyond that, because it's like, well, getting beyond our cosmic environment here, our neighborhood, it's much harder to detect these smaller rocky planets that are orbiting closely to their stars than it is to detect, big gas giants and whatever that are orbiting further. Yeah, our instruments today have no problems finding those, but we're now getting to a point where we can find the smaller, rockier ones, thanks to Webb and a number of ground-based telescopes that are coming online, and like the extremely large telescope, that one, yeah, it's like the 30-meter class telescopes. And that was another story I loved covering too, because the research that had been published said these observatories are going to have everything they need: coronagraphs, top of the line spectrometers, AI for sorting through the volumes of data they're going to have, and adaptive optics. They're going to be able to see those planets directly. So we won't even be confirming them based on indirect methods anymore. We're going to be able to picture them, and not necessarily around red dwarf suns, but definitely around stars that are like our sun. And it's like, well, and Webb's infrared optics, it's going to be able to detect those planets too from their heat. So it's like, we are bound to find so many Earth-like planets in the near future, and I'm willing to bet good money that, again, it's going to be red dwarf stars that have, the most potentially habitable candidates, right? Yeah, so I really hope those are, sorry, kind of went down off on a tangent there.
But I'm happy that you were able to write about it, and few of the insiders know all the details related to exoplanets. And I am feeling ashamed because I really don't know that much about exoplanets. I know, okay, they are rocky planets and they could be habitable, but you have given me more perspective that I should be studying more on exoplanets now. So when we're talking about habitability,
I can send you all kinds of cool stuff there. But sorry, go on.
Yeah, that would be perfect, because I really love exchanging ideas and exchanging all the papers, and I am always sending whatever I feel, okay, this is worthy of the read, I always send it to all my contacts, and you should read it. So I've been forwarding all your posts post on LinkedIn to my contacts as well. Like, this person is writing the proper thing. This person is writing the actual thing, what we are doing in Ladakh or what we are doing on Earth. So I really like your articles in that way. And good job with the science communication and with the story on exoplanets. So as we are talking about the habitability, I would like to raise a question related to life on other celestial bodies, which is a really popular topic for all the science fiction or the movies, or even for general public. That is there life on Earth? Is there life beyond Earth? So if you could choose one planet, as you have always worked on exoplanets and you have written on it, so if you could choose one planet or moon to explore in depth, which would it be, and what's one question you want to answer about it?
Well, Proxima B, definitely. I would very much, if it were possible, to get a close-up look at that planet, I would jump at the chance, right? And because that I would definitely want to see. I would be very interested to know if, in fact, all the research we've done, all the speculating we've done, all the informed projections that we've had there. It's like, well, what do we got? Is it an eyeball planet, right? With covered in ice there, but with an ocean showing on one side? Is it a dry ice ball, right? And so that sun-facing side there is the surface is not covered in ice or oceans there, but then go to the other side and there's like a big frost ring around the terminator, the boundary between the day and the night side. I think that would be really awesome. In terms of moons, I would like to see Titan. Yeah, I was thinking Europa is definitely a possibility. And it's like, well, Europa, Enceladus, the list goes on. Ganymede, who wouldn't want to see these places there? But I'm thinking, I'd like to go to the one that's got a dense atmosphere and where we could sit down on the surface and not worry about getting irradiated, because that would be very interesting. And yes, above all else, to be able to play around in the lower gravity and see the methane rain in the methane lakes. The astrobiology mission, the Dragonfly, that is going there. Cannot wait. And I hope they take lots of video, because or just lots of pictures and then just splice them together, make a video. That would be amazing. The second part of your question was one question I would ask about them?
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah. It would be, what other conditions can life emerge under? Because that is another major question that always comes up, and and it's related to the whole Fermi paradox question, right? And another thing I'm obsessed with. But it's like, is life something that can only emerge with the following conditions, like what we have on Earth, or is it something that uses what's there and comes together? Because there's been a lot of speculation that there could be what they refer to as methanogenic life on Titan. It's like, it's got all the chemistry, and realistically, the building blocks are there, and the life would be different. But if it can happen, then it would, and that would mean that there's a lot of bodies out there in the universe that are probably doing the same thing. So, what if one of them has had sufficient time to evolve and become complex and so forth? Would there be such a thing as intelligent life that breathes an atmosphere of nitrogen and methane? Well, that'd be really cool. Stay tuned for part 2 of this interview coming up next week.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Stories from Space podcast with Matthew Williams. If you learned something new and this podcast made you think, then share itspmagazine.com with your friends, family, and colleagues. If you represent a company and wish to associate your brand with our conversations, sponsor one or more of our podcast channels. We hope you will come back for more stories and follow us on our journey. You can always find us at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society.